Hello and welcome to the Washington Week Webcast Extra. Joining me around the table, Mark Mazzetti of the New York Times, Nancy Youssef of McClatchy Newspapers, Robert Costa of the Washington Post, and John Harwood of CNBC and the New York Times. Welcome back to the fray, Hillary Clinton. With the publication of her new book, Hard Choices, this week, she's reclaimed the political limelight with a vengeance, demonstrating how organized a rollout campaign can be and how risky. Here's what she told Diane Sawyer on why she's been making so much money giving high-dollar speeches.
We came out of the White House not only dead broke, but in debt. We had no money when we got there, and we struggled to, piece together the resources for mortgages, for houses, for Chelsea's education. It was not easy.
There are so many ways to go with that one. There are about 5 different phrases you should have never used. So on balance, how did the rollout roll, John?
Well, as a matter of selling books, not bad. She's got a lot of publicity. She's selling a lot of books. As a matter of politics, there were a couple significant problems. That's one of them. And that was a very bad way for her to describe her circumstances and the kind of thing that makes her susceptible to being labeled out of touch with average people. She also had a dust-up with an NPR host, Terry Gross, in which she said, I think unfairly to the host, that the host was trying to trick her into or get her to be portrayed as overly political, and the host was asking a legitimate question, which was, did you always have the view that you were for gay marriage but felt unable as a matter of politics to come out with it, or did you evolve yourself? And she, in a roundabout way, eventually said, well, I evolved, but she did it after being very snippy and a way that indicates that she needs to practice a little bit before she hits the campaign trail, or if this is the campaign trail, she will benefit from some practice.
Even if this is not officially the campaign trail, is that a difference without a distinction at this point?
Probably, yeah. And look, she's in a very strong position in the race. In fact, I don't ever remember, in covering politics for a long time, somebody before the next presidential election being in such a strong position, not only to win her party's nomination, but to win the general election. We've seen strange things happen in politics, and she will need to raise her game.
The higher they rise, the faller you, whatever the term is, the faller you fall, whatever. Robert, so now we dissected what Eric Cantor did wrong that got him in this position. So what does he do next?
I think Eric Cantor is going to have a lot of options on the table. Talking to his allies, his friends, they say he wants to stay in politics in some way, but he's getting a lot of offers for K Street jobs, lobbyist jobs in both Washington and New York City. Some of his friends are actually pushing him to maybe be the next chairman of the Republican National Committee. Probably not going to happen, but it's something Cantor people are talking about. How does he stay on the national scene? He's a strong fundraiser. How can he bring all of those skills together and maybe still be a player? But it's going to be difficult because I think his political capital is diminished with this defeat, and it's going to be interesting to see how he navigates the path ahead.
The one thing we know for sure about Washington is you can lose because you didn't get reelected in your home district, but you can still win afterward because you have a lot of friends in Washington who can make sure that you do.
Even if you're dead broke.
Even if you're dead broke.
Cantor won't be dead broke, that's for sure. There'll be no one in Washington who's closer to the Speaker of the House and the current leadership than Eric Cantor. He'll do just fine.
Nancy and Mark, I want to talk to you some more about Iraq because there was so much we couldn't get to in the main broadcast. Among them, the relationship between the worry that this administration has about Iraq and the degree that it's linked to Syria.
Yeah, it's, Obama, to the extent that he's liked to talk about Iraq, it's the war he ended. And it must have been very strange for him to stand up, and the lawn of the White House today and intimate that he's thinking about some kind of a military strike in Iraq, airstrikes or that type of thing. And he couldn't ignore it. And he of course has to say, all options are on the table. But it was. But even more broadly, the Middle East was going to be the region he was going to step back from, disengage from, pull America's, look east to Asia. No one's talking about that anymore. We're in the Middle East for good.
Partly because of Syria and Iraq and Iran and Afghanistan. That whole
Libya.
It's sticky.
Libya.
And Libya. It's very sticky. We can't go away. But okay, so say that there's the folks who are on the ground who really have to decide, who really have to act on whatever we do or don't do. The soldiers, the actual members of the military, how are they viewing all of this?
You know, it's interesting. I spent the week in the Pentagon, and we talk about this nation being Iraqed out, and boy, no one could feel it more than the United States military. But this war is so personal, so when they hear Mosul has fallen, this is an area they've lost friends and comrades, where they've worked alongside Iraqi soldiers and tried to train them, and they've built friendships. So to see it fall apart is heartbreaking, even as they hesitate about the prospect of going back in and understand the limitations of that. They're frustrated, I think, in a lot of cases with al-Maliki, but it's so personal for them. And so we talk about this as a policy or as a presidential decision, but for these guys, I think more than even the strikes in Libya or Syria, this is a very personal thing. Mosul's not a name for them. It's a place they lived and a place where they have friends. Tikrit is a place where they went in very early on. That was General Odierno's area of responsibility when he started. He's now the Chief of Staff of the Army. So it's interesting. We talk in sort of macro terms, but it's so personal, and you couldn't get around that. Anywhere in the Pentagon today, and even on places like Facebook, if you're friends with soldiers, everybody sort of chimed in with how much it hurt them to see what was happening there, even as they weren't keen on going back in.
Does anybody think that Nouri al-Maliki can survive this as president?
I don't see how the United States can use some sort of military strike and continue to prop up the man who many would argue is principally responsible for this. He has been sectarian from the minute he took office. He is Shia. He went after the Iraqi vice president who was Sunni. He went after the finance minister. He moved Sunni commanders out and replaced them with Shia ones, and that contributed to the fall of the security forces. So if the United States is going to do a military strike, it is to prop up whatever government is there. And I think for a lot of people, the idea of propping up Nouri al-Maliki yet again when he hasn't been willing to make the kinds of necessary concessions to create a national state will be difficult.
I certainly heard that in the president's remarks today. Thank you all very much. If you want to keep up with everything else our panelists are writing and reporting, you can go online every weekday to the Washington Week website and click over to the Essential Reads tab. And while you're there, you can read my take on whack-a-mole politics and policy. And we'll see you again next time on the Washington Week Webcast Extra.